So my name's Christine, aka Crafti Potential, and I'm a crafter of Tonic Studios. Today I will be making a shaker card for you using the fantastic Floral Finestra collection. So the first step for creating this gorgeous simple shaker card using the Floral Finestra collection and the tropical set of rub-ons that coordinate with this die set, I'm going to get my card blank and one layer panel ready. So I'm using a 5x7 card, so I've got my 5x7 top folding card blank just to be something a little bit different, and then I've got a panel of white card to go on top of it that is 4.5 by 6.5 inches, so you've just got a nice little 1/2 inch border all the way around the edge. Then to create this gorgeous kind of almost oval kind of aperture in here, I'm using the fancy floral layering die set, which has a bunch of different elements in it, but right in the center of it, it has this gorgeous aperture with a scalloped piece around the edge. So we're actually going to use the interior shape to cut an aperture into our white panel here, and we're going to secure this into position with a little bit of low tack tape. We just want it right in the center, and I'm just eyeballing it, but you can be more precise if you want to be, getting all of your measurements equidistant from the sides of your card. So we're going to cut that piece into there. Then to create this section here in the center of our aperture, we're going to be using one of the Floral Finestra dies. There are two in the set, but I'm going to be using the one that kind of looks like it reminds me of a stained glass window, having like these little pieces cut into almost like a plaid background here, whereas the other one has more of a lattice finish to it. But we're going to be using this one, and all you want to do for this is just cut this into a piece of white card. It doesn't have to be any specific size because we don't need anything that is really bigger than this, but we're going to do a little bit of fussy cutting later just so that the top of this leaf and the top of the flower can poke over the top of our aperture. But we're also going to be die cutting this piece, plus we also want to die cut from some green card from your stash. I just put any of my green card lying around up to the actual image transfer, just to get the perfect match of colour on there. So from this piece of card we're going to be cutting the scalloped piece plus the smooth edged aperture that we're also using to cut into the centre of this. So once we've cut this one, we can place it inside there to cut that as well. So let's get all the die cutting done. So now we've got our initial die cut pieces ready for creating our card, we want to add our image transfer, our rub-on, onto this die cut piece. And the clever thing about this die set is this side of the die that actually gives you apertures inside of the card will match up to the stamp set plus the 3 different rub-on sets as well. So there are the Lillies, the tropical and the Poppies, and we're using the tropical hibiscus ones in today's video, but all of them will line up because it's this part of the rub-on or the stamp that's actually different. All of these will line up within the same die cut, which is really lovely, and both of them will do that too, so you can have the lattice or you can have this more open design as well. So when you're using the rub-ons, what you want to do is you want to keep the whole sheet together and trim around the design that you want to use. So I've still got the backing on this sheet, but I have trimmed around the design that I want to use so that I'm not getting in a mess with all of the other bits and pieces that are in there. And you want to make it, you know, pick whichever piece you want. So if you're using the whole piece here, then you can cut that out. If you're using some of the smaller pieces, you can just cut it into smaller sections as well. So to apply your rub-on onto your die cut, you want to first peel off the backing paper, and then I find having it sideways is a little bit easier to see. I'll zoom you in so hopefully you can see it nice and clearly, but in person you can see through this top layer quite easily to be able to line this up in the perfect position. You do want to try and get this right the first time, because if you press it down and then you move it, you're probably going to remove some of the image and then it won't be a full image when you actually transfer it down. But as you could see, it's pretty simple to line up. And then all you want to do is the exact same thing that you do with your foil fusion sticky transfers, and you just use your glide bone folder to rub over the top of it just to make sure that image is actually adhering to the cardstock and releasing from that transfer paper. Okay, so let's see if we've rubbed it on enough, and we just want to carefully peel it back, making sure that the image is transferring onto the cardstock and not staying on the carrier sheet. So there we have our beautiful tropical hibiscus flowers onto our die cut piece. Now, I want this to overlap the top of the aperture a little bit, but if I put this behind the aperture, you're going to lose part of that flower and that leaf up there. So all we're going to do is take our scissors, and these recoil mini snips are fantastic for this, and we just want to free the top of this leaf and the top round this flower up to this leaf. So we're just going to very carefully cut into the design just to make those two pieces free so that they can poke over the top of our aperture. And we're leaving the rest of it there. We don't want to cut any of this away because you'll be able to see this in the background still. We just want the leaf to poke up above the frame. And then we can do this piece over here where we've got this little leaf, and then around the edge of the flower as well. If you see what I'm doing by manoeuvring my scissors, sometimes going underneath the image is better, sometimes coming from the top is better to get a neat cut as you're snipping these out. But it's fairly simple to do, and I think it gives a nice effect to the final card because you're sort of making the flower design come outside of the aperture. So we're just going to simply follow this around. Doesn't have to be right up to the line, leaving a little white border is quite nice, and the actual transfers have a tiny little clear border all the way around the edge, so you can use that as a guide to cut around if you want to be perfectly equidistant all the way around the design. So once you have that piece cut, first of all we want to stick our frame onto the outside of our aperture just to give it a lovely little bit of extra colour and bring in some of the extra colours from the actual rub-on as well. So just adding a tiny bit of glue all the way around the edge and then placing that into position. Okay, then we want to add this piece behind our aperture, but then we're going to pull that leaf and that flower forwards. And we might have to straighten up where we've made any little pieces crooked from cutting around it and hitting it with our scissors. But you can sort of line this up how you would like. I quite like to see this skinny little line within the die cut over this side, and then I'm just sort of positioning it however I feel looks best with inside the aperture. So I'm kind of going next to this skinny line here with this straight side of the aperture, and then not letting that bottom piece be seen. If I move that down slightly, you can see there's a straight line just there. I don't know if you can actually see that, but there's a little straight line just there. So I'm just going just above that so you can't see it, and then in a straight line with the ones down the side as well. Then to secure this into position, it's a little bit tricky to try and like flip it up the other way, put a bit of tape on and secure it. So I find taking a little bit of your Nuvo Deluxe adhesive in a fine tip bottle or with your fine tip nozzle on the top of it, and just putting a little bit underneath those areas that are overlapping onto the front. It's just going to secure it into place initially, and then you can carefully hold it in different areas, flip it up like this, and put a little bit onto these outside corners to get them to hold into place. And then I have another trick for once you've got it to sort of be roughly held into place. We're going to actually just use some tape on the back of it to hold it really nicely into place, and this will also hold the acetate into place as well. So once we've got to this stage and we've got our actual design on the back here, we want to add our acetate to turn this into a shaker card. So I've just got some of the Tonic Heavyweight Construction acetate. I'm going to remove that gorgeous protective layer that's on there, and then we can add a little bit of adhesive around the edges, a little bit over where the image is as well, because this is going to adhere onto the acetate, and we kind of want it to be held in place nicely and not loosely moving around. So a little bit of adhesive like that onto the back, and then we can add our acetate with the protective cover taken off. And then to help secure this into place, this is where you just want some regular tape, just any sort of tape, just to really hold that down whilst the glue dries. And obviously we're going to leave it on there as well, but it'll just really hold that acetate into position. So now we've got that nicely secured, we want to add some foam tape onto the back of it. This can be any foam tape you have, it can be the little foam squares, however you like to make your shaker cards. And we just want to, we want the whole thing to be the same height. So we actually want foam tape over the whole of the back of this to make the whole card panel be raised up the same distance from your card. But obviously we don't want to go over where you can see through the acetate. So we're going to create a well around the open aperture areas, and then we're going to fill the rest in with some 3D foam as well. So I find it easiest to do the first line over here, then get the second line the other side of where we want the well to be, and then we can do a third strip here just to make it all nice and even, and then we can take some smaller pieces of the tape, and if the width is right we can just add a piece in there, and then add a piece at the top as well, trimming it to size. And this is creating our well where all of our shaker elements are going to fit into here. However, I've cut that a little bit short, and we don't want there to be any gaps because we don't want anything escaping from here. So you can just fill in tiny gaps with a little sliver of foam tape. And then for this section here, just to make sure that's nicely supported as well, we can cut another piece of foam tape, trim it in half lengthways, and add that into there just to make sure that that is nicely supported as well. So for this shaker, I'm actually using some of the bits and pieces from the Tropical Paradise colour trend from a few years ago, because the Magnificent Magenta mirror card is the perfect pink to go with the beautiful hibiscus flower on here. And also from that colour trend there were fabulous flamingo circles, which we're going to use as our shaker element for this card as well. So flip this back over, and we're going to remove the backing of the foam tape around the aperture of our little shaker well that we're creating. Then we're going to take some of the fabulous flamingo circles and use our Tonic spoon, obviously, or our Nouveau spoon, to scoop some of these into the shaker well. You don't have to do too many because we're putting a gorgeous mirror card behind here. You don't really need too much in your shaker. It's just to sort of add some interest to the card. And I'm also using a few pink seed beads from my stash as well, just to help those confettis move around nicely in there. So once we've done that, we can make sure that there are no pieces of confetti on our double-sided tape, and then we can take our mirror card and stick this over the back to seal in all of those shaker pieces of confetti, and then just run your fingers over where the foam tape is so that you're getting a nice strong bond between the mirror card and your foam tape. Once you've done that, you can flip this over. Get your long bladed pair of scissors, it's just much simpler to do this with a long bladed pair, and trim under the sides of your card. So you're kind of undercutting just to take away any of that excess mirror card that is showing on the sides. And there we've got our beautiful shaker panel in there. So gorgeous shaking element on this card. Then, when I was creating the original card, I felt like the pink wasn't balanced enough. I felt like we need another flower over here and a little bit more foliage as well. So, in the sheets of the rub-ons, you also have individual flowers and individual leaf elements. So I've rubbed some onto this piece of white card, and then I'm just going to use my scissors to fussy cut those images out. So now we've got our little extra transfer images cut out, we can add them where we think they'll look nice within the arrangement. So I felt like we could maybe do with one more piece of foliage up here. So I'm just going to cut that stalk of that leaf a little bit shorter so I can tuck it in a little bit further. And I'm just going to use glue to stick this one down. Then I also, as I said before, feel like we need an extra flower down here to balance it nicely. So I'm going to use a couple of these extra leaves here. I'm going to stick those down flat, and then I'm going to 3D up that last hibiscus flower as well. So I think putting them like this. You do actually get leaves that go in different directions as well. On the original card I've used leaves that curved the other direction, so you can play around with which ones you think will look nicer for your composition as well. And then finally, for that gorgeous little hibiscus flower, we're just going to add another little piece of foam tape on the back of that, just to raise that up nicely on the front of our card. So we're almost done. All we need now is a sentiment, and the stamp set that comes with the Floral Finestra collection has some really punny sentiments within there, and the one that I'm going to use for this card actually says sending hugs and hibiscuses. So it's playing on the word hibiscus and the sentiment hugs and kisses, which is really nice. So first of all, I'm going to show you how I cut it into this small little rectangle. In the die set you do have little banner dies, however I wanted a skinnier sentiment for this card, and I wanted to cut my own little skinny mirror card mat around the edge. But if you don't like doing that, you do get two options of different dies. One is just a normal rectangle and one has little banner ends to it as well. So within the die set you have the ability to die cut your sentiment too. So I'm just going to stamp this in black ink. And then once you've got your sentiment stamped, again, your long bladed pair of scissors, whether it's the original scissors or the recoil ones, are fantastic for cutting along a sentiment. If you're not very good with a guillotine and tiny little pieces to cut out, the long bladed pair of scissors is fantastic. So you just want to cut along all of the sides of your sentiment, and then you want to just stick that onto a scrap of the magnificent magenta mirror card, and then repeat the process, but leaving just like a millimetre or two around the edge of your sentiment, just to give it a gorgeous little border that's going to match in with the backing piece behind our shaker card. So there we've got our punny little sentiment that we can use another piece of foam tape to add that straight onto our card. Then to finish this off, all we need to do is add this onto our card blank. So on the back of this, we already have some adhesive left there from our foam tape, but where we have stuck the card on the back of the shaker, we can just take some of our Craft Perfect tissue tape and add a little bit extra of that onto there to make that adhesive so that it will stick onto our card blank. So going for the fold of our card blank, so I've got a top folding 5x7 card. I'm holding the fold of it here, and I'm going to line up this edge first. I find that's the easiest way to get your panel nice and central on your card. And then press into position, and we have our finished shaker card. using the Floral Finestra collection from Tonic Studios. I'm using the dies, the stamps, and also the tropical set of rub-ons, and we can compare it against the original. The only difference is I've just used leaves in different directions for these little elements here. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Bye!